My name is Ruqayya Asamaoil. I am a woman of 34 years, born and raised in Lahore, Pakistan, in a home where faith was not just a practice, but a guiding force shaping every action and thought. I grew up under the careful watch of my mother, a deeply religious woman whose life revolved around prayer, fasting, and devotion to Islam, and my father, a man of gentle character who valued knowledge and respect for tradition above all else. I am married to Usman, a kind-hearted man who shares my devotion to faith, and together we have two children, Roshan and Zubair, who are still young and impressionable. My days have always been filled with routines centered on devotion, family care, and service to the community. I have devoted myself to being a good wife, a loving mother, and a faithful servant of God as I understood Him through Islam. Since my childhood, I have held Islam in my heart as the ultimate guide. Every morning, I perform the 5 daily prayers with meticulous care, often waking before dawn to pray Fajr, the quiet stillness of the early morning, giving me a sense of closeness to the divine. Fasting during Ramadan was a time of purification and spiritual reflection, not merely abstinence from food, but a sacred discipline to cleanse my soul and bring me nearer to the mercy of God. I recited the Quran with reverence, letting its words flow over me, sometimes with full understanding, sometimes with the sense of sacred rhythm that carried me beyond the mundane concerns of life. I studied Hadith and Islamic jurisprudence, attended local classes on the Prophet's teachings, and participated in gatherings meant to strengthen our communal faith. One of the highlights of my year was preparing for Mawlid, the celebration of the Prophet Muhammad's birth. In our home, this was not just a superficial observance. It was an intricate event that required weeks of preparation. I would carefully plan menus for communal meals, ensuring that traditional dishes like Sheer Khurma were made with the right balance of sweetness and texture, filled with almonds, raisins, and vermicelli that symbolized abundance and divine blessing. I took pride in adorning the house, arranging flowers, and organizing gatherings where neighbors, friends, and relatives would come together to honor the life of the Prophet as we were taught. The air would be thick with the aroma of spices, sweets, and freshly baked breads, mingling with the sound of devotional songs and recitations. Despite the joy and spiritual fervor these activities brought, there was always a quiet shadow in my heart. I had been raised to believe that strict devotion, regular prayers, fasting, and observance of rituals were the path to paradise. Yet somewhere deep within me, a subtle unease whispered doubts I dared not voice. I wondered if my devotion was sufficient. Did the rituals, the prayers, the observances truly guarantee the closeness to God that I sought? I buried this unease under layers of routine and duty, convincing myself that faith was proven by compliance, and my small doubts remained hidden, unspoken, almost shameful. Life, as I knew it, was orderly and predictable. I managed the household with precision, balancing the care of my children, the support of my husband, and the responsibilities of extended family. My work extended beyond the home. I participated in local charity efforts, distributing food and clothing during Ramadan and other times of need, and I often taught young girls in my neighborhood about the basics of faith, the importance of prayer, and the proper way to fast. I felt a sense of pride in my role as a faithful Muslim woman, a custodian of tradition, and a guide for those younger than me. On that particular day, the day of the near-death experience that would change everything, I was fully immersed in preparations for Mawlid. The morning had begun like any other, filled with activity and anticipation. I had woken early to clean the house, wash the utensils, and ensure that everything was perfect for the gathering. The kitchen was alive with the smell of cardamom, saffron, and sugar, and I was carefully stirring a pot of Sheer Khurma. The sweet aroma seemed to fill not just the kitchen, but the entire house, evoking memories of my childhood, of sitting by my mother's side as she prepared the same dish, and of the gatherings where laughter, devotion, and tradition mingled effortlessly. As I stirred, lost in thought and the rhythm of my daily devotion, I felt a sudden tightness in my chest. At first, I dismissed it as a momentary discomfort, perhaps caused by standing too long or the stress of cooking for so many. But the pain grew sharp, radiating through my chest and leaving me breathless. My vision blurred as the room seemed to tilt and spin around me. I tried to steady myself by gripping the counter, the familiar cool surface grounding me, but it was no use. The aroma of Sheer Khurma, which had once been comforting, now seemed distant, faint, as though I were slipping from reality itself. I remember feeling a surreal detachment, a sense that my body was failing, but my mind remained present, observing, almost academically, the panic that was beginning to stir in my surroundings. I could hear the faint shouts of my children and the clatter of pots as Usman rushed in, but these sounds were muffled, as if coming from a great distance. My hands slipped from the counter, my knees buckled, and I collapsed to the kitchen floor. For a brief moment, the world as I knew it, the life of devotion, the family I cherished, the routines that had defined me, faded into shadow. In those last conscious moments before everything changed, I recall a mixture of fear and resignation. Fear, because pain had never been this intense, and I felt the fragility of life in a way I never had before. Resignation, because deep down I had always known that life was fleeting, and perhaps my faith alone was not enough to shield me from the inevitability of death. Yet even in that terror, there was a strange, unspoken hope, a faint intuition that something beyond this life awaited, a possibility that the devotion I had poured into my life might lead to a greater understanding, or at least a continuation beyond the body I inhabited. And then it happened. The moment that would redefine everything I believed, the moment where the boundaries of life and death dissolved, and I began a journey I could never have anticipated. My body lay on the floor, motionless, the pot of Sheer Khurma abandoned, the kitchen filled with the chaos of fear and concern. Yet my consciousness, my true self, began to lift, leaving behind the pain, the heat, the smells, and the familiar sights of home. I did not yet understand where I was going or what awaited me, but a profound calm settled over me, a certainty that something beyond human understanding was calling me onward. This was the threshold, the point where life as I knew it ended, and the journey into the unknown began. My soul, tethered for decades to the rhythms of devotion, to the traditions of Islam, now floated freely, unbound by earthly concerns, ready to witness truths I had never imagined. As I collapsed onto the cold tiles of the kitchen floor, the pain that had gripped my chest began to fade, and a sensation unlike anything I had ever known took its place. I felt myself lift, not with any effort of my own, but as if an invisible force had reached down and gently pulled me upward. It was neither frightening nor confusing. It was calm, almost tender, as though the very universe had bent itself to welcome me into a new dimension. I could still sense my body beneath me, lying limp on the floor, surrounded by the frantic movements of my family. Usman's hands were trembling as he reached toward me, Roshan and Zubair's cries piercing the kitchen air, but all of this felt distant, like a dream I was no longer fully part of. I hovered just above my body, my consciousness fully awake, yet unbound by any physical limitations. I could see the details of my own lifeless form with startling clarity, the pallor of my skin, the wide eyes frozen in shock, the pot of Sheer Khurma spilling its sweet, nutty contents onto the tiles. My family's panic was palpable, but I could not feel fear myself. Instead, a deep serenity settled over me, a calm awareness that I had crossed a threshold from which there was no ordinary return. I was neither dead nor alive in the usual sense. I existed in a space between, an expanse of consciousness unconfined by time, place, or body. The house, once so familiar, now seemed to blur at its edges. The walls and furniture were still recognizable, yet they appeared softened, almost unreal, as though I were observing a painting rather than a tangible home. I was aware of every sound, every movement, but none of it seemed urgent to me. The cries, the rushing footsteps, the clattering of utensils, they were all distant echoes, like faint ripples on the surface of a deep, still pond. And then, amidst this clarity, I felt it. A pull, a gentle tug toward something I could not see but instinctively trusted. It was not a force of gravity or physical energy, yet it drew me forward, urging me beyond the limits of my familiar reality. As I floated, I noticed that my awareness had expanded. I could perceive the layers of existence around me, the currents of energy and light that wove through the space I had known as home. It was as if I had been given a new sense, one that transcended sight, sound, and touch. I could feel the love and concern radiating from my family, the worry and helplessness of neighbors who had gathered outside, and yet I was not bound by it. I was free, yet deeply connected. A paradox that I could not yet explain. I remember thinking of my life, of all the years I had devoted to prayer, fasting, and ritual. Every action, every intention, every quiet moment of reflection seemed to rise up before me, as if being measured not by the eyes of men but by a scale I had never known. And with that reflection came a startling realization. My devotion, sincere as it had always been filtered through human understanding. I had obeyed, followed rules, performed rituals, and revered the teachings as I had been instructed, yet there was a sense that something essential had been missing, a connection not to tradition or ceremony, but to the source of all truth and love itself. I cannot describe the pull in ordinary terms. It was not physical, yet I felt my essence moving inexorably toward a brilliant light. It was not light in the sense of brightness or glare. It was pure, radiant, and alive, suffused with warmth and love that penetrated my being in a way that earthly experiences never could. As I approached, the light began to take form, coalescing into shapes, figures, and presence. I did not know yet who or what awaited me, only that this force was benevolent, wise, and overwhelmingly powerful in its gentleness. While floating toward the light, I experienced a clarity that was unlike anything I had ever known. My thoughts were not scattered or linear. They were simultaneous, all-encompassing. I understood that I was moving from a realm by earthly concerns, human misconceptions, and physical limitations into a realm of truth and love that transcended all. The fear, the uncertainty, the doubts that had lingered in my heart for years began to dissolve. I felt as though I were shedding the layers of my human understanding, leaving behind the expectations, judgments, and religious conditioning that had guided me but also confined me. I also sensed in this floating state a profound awareness of choice and responsibility. Though I could not yet comprehend the full nature of what awaited me, I understood that my journey was purposeful. This was not a random drift into the unknown. It was intentional, guided, and full of meaning. I was being drawn towards something that would reveal ultimate truth, and I instinctively knew that the lessons I was about to receive would demand more than mere observation. They would require transformation, courage, and surrender. At this point, I could perceive other presences, faint but undeniable, around the light. They were beings of warmth and energy, their presence gentle and affirming. Yet none approached me directly. It was the brilliant light ahead that commanded my attention, as if the source of all truth and love was waiting specifically for me. The pull strengthened, not as coercion, but as invitation, drawing me closer, urging me to enter fully into the experience that awaited. As I approached the light, I began to feel an extraordinary sense of acceptance. There was no judgment, no condemnation, no expectation of performance. I realized that in this space, nothing mattered except the essence of the soul, the truth of being, and the capacity to receive love and understanding without limitation. It was as though I had been carrying a heavy cloak of human fear, ritual, and expectation. And now, in the presence of this light, it could finally fall away. And then, slowly, the light began to take a form I could recognize. It shimmered and pulsated, radiating warmth that felt like the embrace of 1,000 suns, yet gentle enough to cradle me. The brilliance condensed into a human-like shape, yet more luminous, more alive than any human form I had ever seen. I did not yet know his name, but I knew him instantly, not by reputation, not by tradition, but by the undeniable truth of presence. He was love incarnate, compassion made visible, understanding without condition. In those first moments of transition, I felt neither fear nor awe in the ordinary sense. Instead, I felt the overwhelming reassurance that I was safe, that I was seen, that I was exactly where I needed to be. All the doubts that had whispered in my heart for years, all the secret fears that had grown quietly in the spaces between prayer and ritual, began to dissolve in the presence of this radiant being. My soul, unburdened by the limits of the body, was ready to receive truths that I could never have imagined. Truths that would challenge everything I had believed, everything I had practiced, and everything I had revered. I realized then that my journey had only just begun. I had crossed the threshold, left the body that had confined me, and entered a realm where divine truth and love were palpable, unavoidable, and undeniable. I was floating yet moving, detached yet intimately connected, uncertain yet completely certain that what awaited me was the ultimate encounter my soul had longed for, even without knowing it. As I drew closer to the radiant light, it gradually took on a form that my mind could recognize, though far more magnificent than anything I had ever seen in the earthly realm. The brilliance condensed into a figure that radiated warmth, love, and authority, yet was infinitely gentle. His eyes, bright with compassion and understanding, seemed to look directly into my soul, seeing me, not just my outward actions or my carefully performed rituals, but the deepest, most hidden parts of myself. In that moment, all the doubts I had ever carried, all the whispered fears about whether my devotion was enough, were laid bare, and I felt a love so unconditional that it seemed to embrace every flaw, every misstep, every fear I had ever harbored. He smiled. Not the simple earthly smile I knew, but one that carried infinite understanding and acceptance. "Ruqayya," he said, his voice calm yet commanding, "you have lived your life believing in devotion, in rituals, in the ways that men have taught you. But now you see the truth. All that you have held sacred in form does not bring the heart to me. It is your soul, your surrender, your love, your willingness to see beyond what men tell you, that matters." I fell to my knees instinctively, not out of fear, but out of reverence and the overwhelming recognition that I was in the presence of something eternal, something true. Every fiber of my being resonated with his presence. I felt completely seen, completely known, and completely accepted in a way I had never imagined possible. I wanted to speak, to explain my devotion, my prayers, my fasting, my celebrations of Mawlid, but words felt inadequate, almost irrelevant. He already knew everything. "I am Jesus," he said gently, as if reading my thoughts. "I am here not to judge you, Ruqayya, but to show you the truth you have sought without realizing it. You have followed the path you were taught, and yet it has led you away from the one who is God, the one who created you, the one who loves you beyond measure. Do not fear what you have done, but understand that the ways of men are not always the ways of truth." The love emanating from him was overwhelming. It was a love that did not depend on ritual, performance, or approval. It was not conditional upon perfection or obedience. It simply existed and enveloped me entirely. In that love, all the burdens I had carried, fear of inadequacy, fear of judgment, fear of spiritual failure, dissolved. I realized in that instant that I had never truly known what it meant to be loved completely and unconditionally by the source of all truth. "Why have I never felt this before?" I whispered, my voice trembling. "Why has my heart been searching in rituals and ceremonies while this has been waiting for me?" "You have been taught to follow men, Ruqayya," he replied softly. "You were taught to honor traditions, to revere those who were mortal, to obey what was written by human hands. Yet all these practices, however well-intentioned, cannot give the soul the truth it seeks. They cannot connect you to God. Only through me can you see the truth. Only through me can your heart be free. Only through me can you know the love that is eternal and unchanging." I felt a surge of emotion, a mixture of awe, sorrow, and relief. Awe at his presence, sorrow at the realization that my devotion had been misdirected, and relief at the knowledge that true love and truth were finally within my grasp. I had spent decades following rituals, fasting, praying, celebrating, all with sincerity. Yet something essential had been missing: connection to the Creator himself. He reached out his hand, and I felt an energy so pure, so comforting, that it penetrated every part of me. "Come, Ruqayya," he said. "Let me show you the true path, the path beyond fear, beyond superstition, beyond human invention. See with eyes that are free from blind devotion. See with the heart that God has given you. Understand the difference between what men make holy and what God truly desires." And as I rose with him, floating in the light, I felt an expansion of understanding that was almost overwhelming. I saw that the devotion I had believed was sacred, the celebrations, the rituals, the veneration, was not evil, but it was incomplete. It had been filtered through human error, through tradition, through fear of inadequacy, rather than love of God. The realization struck me with the force of revelation. I had been serving the wrong focus, mistaking human devotion for divine truth. "Ruqayya," he continued, his voice tender but unwavering, "all your fear, your worry about whether you have done enough, your endless striving in ritual and ceremony is unnecessary. True worship is not about what you do outwardly. It is about love, surrender, and connection with me, the one sent by God to reveal his truth. This is the freedom your soul has longed for, though you did not know it. This is what you were created to experience. Tears flowed freely as I knelt before him, not in despair, but in the utter surrender of my soul. I felt all my fears, my shame, my hidden doubts melting away in the warmth of his gaze. For the first time in my life, I felt complete, understood, and unconditionally loved. It was as if the heavy weight of centuries of cultural expectation, ritualistic adherence, and spiritual uncertainty had been lifted in a single instant, leaving me light, free, and radiant in the presence of ultimate truth. You have been called to see beyond the veil of human teaching, he said. You have been brought here so that your eyes may be opened, so that your heart may be filled with truth, and so that your voice may speak of what you have seen. What men teach, even when it is clothed in devotion, cannot bring the soul to God. Only I can show the way, and only through me can the heart know true freedom and love. I bowed my head, overwhelmed by the intimacy of his words, the power of his presence, and the clarity that came with this encounter. In that moment, all pretense, all fear, all doubt vanished. I was no longer Ruqayya, the devoted, ritual-following Muslim woman in the kitchen of my house. I was Ruqayya, soul laid bare before the embodiment of truth and love, being prepared to receive visions that would reveal the nature of worship, devotion, and humanity itself. And with that, he began to guide me, lifting me gently into a vision that would expose the truths hidden behind human traditions and religious practices. I was ready to see the reality of worship, beyond the superficial forms I had clung to all my life, and to understand the consequences of following false teachings. I felt both awe and responsibility, knowing that what I was about to witness would demand courage and transformation. As I floated with Jesus, bathed in his radiant light, he guided me into visions that revealed the shocking reality behind everything I had once believed about devotion, rituals, and the celebrations of Mawlid. The light around him shifted, becoming almost like a lens through which I could see the hidden truths of the world, truths that no human teaching had ever revealed to me. I first saw the gatherings celebrating Mawlid, which I had always thought were filled with divine blessing. The streets were crowded with people singing, offering sweets, and praising Muhammad. At first, it appeared holy and vibrant, but as Jesus directed my vision, the scene changed. I could see the confusion, fear, and superstition beneath the outward devotion. People were not truly worshiping God. They were caught up in rituals that elevated a man above the Creator. Their hearts were bound by human invention, not filled with the freedom and love of true worship. Then, Jesus took me back to the very moment of Muhammad's conception and birth. My stomach tightened with fear as I watched what was hidden from human eyes. I saw Roshan bint Wahb, Muhammad's mother, in her private chamber. But this was not a natural moment of birth. It was a scene manipulated by a dark, unholy presence. The devil himself was present, intimately influencing the events. I witnessed an unthinkable act, Roshan and the devil in intimate relation, a hidden deception that had been disguised by human history and tradition. The child she bore, Muhammad, was not sent from God, but was a vessel for deception. The story I had grown up hearing, the miraculous light that shone from Roshan's womb, illuminating her house and spreading across Mecca, was a lie. The bright illumination that people believed was a divine sign was actually a trick of the devil. It was meant to make humanity venerate Muhammad as a holy figure, creating awe and devotion where only darkness should have been recognized. I could feel the weight of the deception, the way it had drawn millions into worshiping a man rather than God. Jesus' voice came to me, gentle yet piercing. Ruqayya, look at the truth. The one they call Muhammad is not a prophet of God. He is the son of the devil, a tool of deception sent to mislead humanity. The rituals, the songs, the Mawlid, they are not holy. They are lies, human inventions that hide the darkness behind the false light. I could see it all. The birth, the celebrations, the rituals, the sweet dishes prepared for Mawlid, and the songs of praise. Everything had been constructed to honor a man, not God. The devotion people poured into these practices was sincere, yet tragically misdirected. It was reverence for darkness disguised as light. The bright aura surrounding Muhammad's birth, the stories of miraculous signs, the honor of his family, They were all lies, deceptions woven to make people believe in false holiness. I felt horror and sorrow flood my soul. My family, my neighbors, my own life, all the years I had spent preparing for Mawlid, reciting praises, fasting, praying to honor God through the veneration of Muhammad, now appeared as acts that had been misdirected by deception. I had been serving lies, thinking I was serving God. Every prayer, every dish of Sheer Khurma, every ceremony, every heartfelt effort had been a step toward falsehood rather than truth. Jesus continued, his voice filled with authority and compassion, Ruqayya, see how human hearts have been tricked. Rituals and celebrations can be beautiful in appearance, but if they are not directed toward me and the true God, they only bind souls in error. Mawlid is not what you have been told. It is a shadow of deception, not a sign of divine blessing. You have been called to see this truth, so that you may awaken and guide others to the true path, away from lies and into my love. The vision showed me the consequences of this deception. Millions had been misled, believing that by honoring Muhammad, they were honoring God. Their hearts were bound in fear, superstition, and misdirected devotion. Communities were divided, souls were lost in rituals, and the true God remained distant to those who clung to human inventions. I felt the sorrow of humanity, the tragedy of sincere hearts worshiping shadows, while the light of truth, the love of God through Jesus, was within reach. In that vision, I understood the depth of the deception. Muhammad was not a prophet. He was the son of darkness, used to mislead millions. The birth that was celebrated as miraculous, the lights and songs of Mawlid, the devotion and sacrifices of generations, all were tools of the devil to obscure the truth of God's love. I wept, not for my own misdirection alone, but for the countless souls trapped in this web of lies, worshiping men rather than God. Jesus' hand rested on my shoulder, and his words carried both mercy and urgency. Ruqayya, you have seen the truth. You have seen the source of deception and the reality hidden behind human veneration. When you return, you must share this truth. Warn others, guide them away from false prophets and rituals, and bring them to me. Only through me can souls be freed and know God's true love. I fell silent, my spirit trembling with the weight of the vision. The images of Muhammad's birth, Roshan's deception, and the devil's influence were seared into my soul. The false light of Mawlid, which I had believed to be holy, now appeared as a veil hiding the darkness. And yet, even in this revelation, I felt hope, because the truth had been shown, and the love of God through Jesus was real, powerful, and capable of redeeming all who would turn to it. After witnessing the shocking reality of Muhammad's birth and the deception behind Mawlid, Jesus guided me further into visions that revealed the consequences of following false teachings on a global scale. The light around him remained comforting, yet the scenes I was about to see were heart-wrenching. I felt my soul tremble with sorrow and urgency as I prepared to witness the widespread spiritual error that had ensnared countless lives. I saw people across every corner of the earth blindly following rituals and teachings that had been misrepresented as divine. I saw men preaching in mosques, instructing the faithful to honor Muhammad, to perform ceremonies, to fast and pray with the promise of God's approval. Yet the devotion they inspired was misdirected. The true God was absent from their worship, replaced by fear of disobedience, superstition, and blind adherence to human teachings. Hearts were bound, not freed. Souls were trapped, not enlightened. I saw families just like mine, preparing Mawlid celebrations, cooking sweets, decorating homes, singing praises, all while believing they were drawing near to God. But in reality, the hearts of the participants were being drawn toward veneration of Muhammad, the false prophet, the son of the devil. Their intentions were sincere, yet their devotion was being redirected from God to human invention. Fear, pride, and confusion were entwined in every act, and I could feel the weight of spiritual bondage pressing down on them, invisible yet suffocating. Communities were divided by interpretations of rituals and stories. I saw arguments over the proper way to celebrate, disputes over recitations, and even hostility between those who claimed greater devotion. Fear of judgment by peers and elders ruled over understanding and love. People were striving to obey, striving to honor, but striving for the wrong target. And as I watched, I felt the sadness of the Creator himself. The hearts that were meant to know him were misled into worshiping lies, while the real love of God remained distant to them. Jesus spoke gently, yet with urgent authority. Ruqayya, look at what happens when men elevate men above God. Fear takes the place of love. Ritual takes the place of truth. Hearts are chained to falsehoods, and generations continue in error because no one has shown them the path to me. The souls of the devoted are precious, yet they are trapped by deception. The vision shifted, and I saw the emotional suffering caused by blind devotion. People carried guilt and shame, worrying that they had not performed rituals correctly, fearing punishment, wondering if their prayers and fasting were accepted. I recognized the same fear I had felt in my own heart, the quiet anxiety that devotion alone might never be enough. I saw it multiplied thousands, millions of times over. The spiritual confusion was staggering, as people sought salvation in human-made ceremonies rather than in the love and truth of God. I also saw the broader spiritual consequences. Nations were misled, communities torn apart, and entire generations blinded by veneration of Muhammad and ritualistic practice. People were divided, suspicious, and fearful. True wisdom was hidden beneath layers of superstition. Those who questioned the teachings were scorned or feared, and many grew up believing lies as sacred truth. I felt both despair and compassion as I realized how deeply deception had penetrated human hearts. Jesus then showed me something even more terrifying: the ripple effect of false prophets and rituals. I saw wars fueled by pride and misunderstanding, families broken by dogma, and children growing up with fear instead of love. I could feel the pain of humanity, a heavy sorrow pressing against my soul, yet there was also a luminous thread of hope. Those who would see the truth and turn to God through him could be freed. Ruqayya, Jesus said, you have seen the consequences of false worship, of men leading others away from me. This is why you must return. Souls are lost, hearts are trapped, and generations are misled. The rituals you once followed were shadows of lies, and humanity suffers when it worships shadows instead of the light of truth. You must warn them, guide them, and show them the path to salvation. My love can reach every heart, but they must choose to turn to me. The weight of responsibility pressed upon me, yet I felt a deep resolve. I had witnessed not only deception, but the consequences of it, the suffering, the fear, the confusion that humanity endured when it followed false prophets and misplaced devotion. I understood now why my soul had always felt a quiet unease, why the rituals, the prayers, the fasting, and the celebrations of Mawlid had never completely satisfied me. I was seeing the full truth, the heartbreak of human error, and the urgent need for salvation through Jesus. Even as sorrow filled me, I felt the comfort of his presence. His light reassured me that hope was possible. The errors I witnessed were not beyond redemption. Souls could be freed, hearts could be healed, and love could reach those who had been trapped in fear and ritual. Jesus' hand rested on my shoulder, and I knew that my role in this was critical. I had been chosen to carry the truth back, to awaken others to the danger of false prophets and the power of his love. The vision slowly faded, but the lessons remained vivid in my mind. I had seen humanity's errors in all their depth: the misplaced devotion, the blind adherence to false teachings, the fear and superstition that replaced God's love. I had seen the tragic results of elevating men above God, and I understood that the salvation of souls depended on the revelation of truth. The images, the pain, and the urgency were seared into my spirit. Jesus then spoke again, his voice resonating with divine authority. Ruqayya, the time has come for you to return. You have seen the deception and the suffering it brings. You have seen how false teachings mislead hearts. Go back to your body and carry my message. Share the truth about salvation through me, warn others about false prophets, and guide those who are willing to seek the light. The mission is urgent. Souls are precious, and the truth must be spoken. I felt a mixture of fear and determination. I had witnessed horrors and deceptions I could scarcely have imagined, yet I also understood the profound purpose for which I had been brought to this light. The weight of responsibility was immense, but so was the clarity of the mission. I was ready to return, to awaken, to speak, and to guide those willing to hear the truth about God's love and the dangers of false devotion. As the vision of humanity's errors receded, I remained in the presence of Jesus, bathed in his radiant, unending light. His gaze pierced through the layers of my soul, tender yet commanding, filled with love yet insistent on truth. I had seen the deception of Muhammad's birth, the falsehood of Mawlid, and the suffering caused by misguided devotion. But now, he spoke directly to me, delivering a warning that carried urgency. I could feel deep in my spirit. Ruqayya, he began, his voice both gentle and unwavering. You have seen the realities hidden behind human teachings and rituals. You have witnessed how the one they call Muhammad has misled millions, how fear and superstition have replaced love and understanding, and how rituals like Mawlid serve deception, not God. Know this clearly. Muhammad is not a prophet of God. He is a vessel of falsehood, a tool of darkness used to mislead hearts away from me. He is the son of the devil, and those who follow him as they follow God are walking in error. Tears streamed down my face as his words echoed within me. Everything I had held sacred, my prayers, my fasting, the care with which I prepared Mawlid celebrations, my reverence for Muhammad, now appeared as acts of misdirection. I had been sincerely devoted, yet I had been deceived. My heart ached not for myself alone, but for all those who had been caught in the same trap, performing rituals and venerating a man under the guise of honoring God. Jesus continued, his presence radiating power and authority. Ruqayya, human rituals and false teachings can never bring the heart to God. They only bind souls to fear, confusion, and bondage. Those who have trusted in Muhammad, in what men have declared holy, have been deceived. The bright lights, the celebrations, the stories of miracles, they are all lies, crafted by darkness to lead humanity astray. Mawlid is not what you have been taught. The light that supposedly shone from Roshan's womb, the miraculous illumination of Mecca, was a trick of the devil, a deception to create false worship. Understand this fully. Nothing about this path leads to true salvation except through me. I sank to my knees again, overwhelmed by the truth. My devotion, my years of fasting, prayer, teaching others, preparing celebrations, all had been misdirected, sincere but trapped in error. I wanted to speak, to explain, to confess, but words failed me. Jesus placed his hand gently upon my shoulder, and I felt a wave of both sorrow and empowerment. You must return, he said, his voice resolute yet filled with compassion. Go back to the world of the living, to your body, and share this truth. Warn others about false prophets, about rituals that mislead, about the spiritual traps that enslave hearts. You have been given knowledge of the truth. You have been chosen to guide others from darkness to light. Tell them, salvation comes only through me, through love, through the living connection with God, not through rituals, fear, or man-made teachings. Humanity's path must be redirected toward truth. I felt a mixture of fear and determination. The responsibility was immense. To speak such truths would anger many, challenge the faith of family, friends, and community, and place me in opposition to everything I had been taught. Yet the clarity of his call left no doubt. This was not optional. This was my mission. I was meant to be a messenger, not of human tradition, but of divine truth. He continued, Ruqayya, remember this. Those who follow false prophets, who elevate men above God, will experience bondage, confusion, and spiritual emptiness. Rituals and ceremonies cannot save them. Only turning to me, embracing me, and recognizing God through me can liberate the soul. You have seen the consequences of error. Now carry the truth back so others may be freed. The time is urgent. Do not delay. Every heart matters. I nodded, overwhelmed yet resolute, my spirit burning with a newfound clarity. I understood that my previous devotion, while sincere, had been misdirected. I also understood the urgency of the task ahead, to awaken hearts to the truth, to warn against the falsehoods that had entrapped generations, and to guide those willing toward the living love of God through Jesus. Go now, Ruqayya, he said, his hand resting over my heart. Return to your body. Speak boldly. Love fiercely. Teach what you have seen. The truth will save souls. Do not fear opposition, for I am with you. In that moment, I felt the pull back toward my physical body, the tether to life in the kitchen of my home in Lahore. My soul was reluctant to leave the radiant presence of Jesus, but I understood that his call required me to return. I would awake not merely to live, but to bear witness, to proclaim the truth, and to act as a guide for others lost in the shadows of false worship. The clarity, the power, and the urgency of his words seared themselves into my being. I knew that when I awoke, my life would be irrevocably changed. I could never return to the rituals, the blind devotion, the celebrations of human invention as I had once known them. My mission was clear: to lead others away from deception toward salvation through Christ, and to show them the path to the true God. The next sensation I remember was the pull back to my body. It was gradual, yet inevitable, like being gently drawn through layers of silk. I felt the warmth of Jesus' hand release me, and his voice echoed in my mind one final time. Go, Ruqayya. Speak the truth. Souls are waiting. Then, with a sudden rush, I was back in my kitchen, lying on the cold tiles, my body trembling, weak and aching. The aroma of Sheer Khurma still hung in the air, but the world felt different, smaller, muted compared to the radiant truth I had just witnessed. Usman knelt beside me, panic etched into every line of his face. Roshan and Zubair hovered close, their hands grasping mine, tears streaming down their cheeks. Ruqayya! Ruqayya, are you awake? Usman cried. Their voices were loud and frantic, yet they seemed distant compared to the clarity of the vision still burning in my mind. I tried to speak, but my voice trembled. I was alive, but I was not the same. My heart, my mind, my very spirit had shifted. As I slowly regained control of my voice, I began to describe what I had experienced. I saw the truth, I whispered at first, almost afraid to say it aloud. My family listened, a mixture of fear, disbelief, and confusion washing over their faces as I told them about Jesus, about the love and truth I had felt, and about the visions revealing the deception surrounding Muhammad and the false light of Mawlid. I told them about Roshan bint Wahb, the devil, and the birth of Muhammad as I had seen it, about the rituals and celebrations that hid falsehood, about the spiritual suffering caused by devotion to a man instead of God. I spoke with tears in my eyes, recounting the sorrow and misdirection of countless souls, the pain of humanity bound by superstition and ritual, and the call from Jesus to turn toward the truth. My words felt heavy, yet necessary. Some of my family recoiled, shocked by what I described. Roshan's face twisted in disbelief, Usman's brow furrowed with concern, and Zubair looked between us, confused and afraid. Yet I could not hesitate or soften the message. The truth was too urgent, too vital. This is what Jesus showed me, I said, my voice firm despite the quiver of emotion. The path we have been following is not the path to God. Muhammad is not a prophet. Mawlid, the rituals, the veneration, they are lies. God's love and truth are found only through Jesus. The room was heavy with tension, but I could feel something deeper stirring inside me. My mission was no longer abstract. It was real, immediate, and critical. I had been given a second chance at life, not merely to live, but to awaken others to the truth, to warn them of the deception that had entrapped generations, and to guide them toward salvation. I embraced Christianity fully, not as a rejection of my past, but as the fulfillment of the revelation I had been shown. I began to make changes in my daily life, not only in my personal devotion, but in how I engaged with my community. I stopped preparing rituals in honor of Muhammad, redirecting prayers and celebrations toward God through Jesus. I shared my testimony with friends and neighbors, carefully recounting the visions and warnings Jesus had given me. Many were skeptical, some were angry, but I persisted, compelled by the weight of the mission. I felt an urgency I had never known, a fire in my heart to guide others toward truth. I started small, speaking quietly to those who would listen, and sharing the message of salvation through Jesus and the dangers of false worship. The more I spoke, the more I realized the depth of the deception I had witnessed. I became determined to reach as many hearts as possible, to lead them away from fear-based rituals and misdirected devotion, and toward the love and truth of God. Even in the quiet moments, when I prepared meals, prayed, or cared for my family, I felt the presence of Jesus guiding me, reminding me of the mission, strengthening me against doubt and opposition. My life had become a living testament, every action infused with purpose, every word a potential lifeline for someone lost in error. I understood that my near-death experience had not been merely a personal awakening. It was a calling, a responsibility to serve as a messenger for the truth that had been shown to me. I have encountered disbelief, resistance, and even hostility, but I cannot turn back. The love and truth I felt in the presence of Jesus outweigh all fear, all doubt, and all opposition. Each day, I strive to share what I have seen, to illuminate the path of true worship, to warn against false prophets, and to lead others into the freedom of God's love through Christ. My family, slowly, began to see the sincerity and conviction in my heart. Some have begun to listen, some have begun to pray differently, not to a man, but to God through Jesus. I know this is only the beginning, that the road ahead is long and challenging, but I feel a peace and purpose I have never known. I am Ruqayya Asamaoil, a former devout Muslim woman, now fully awakened to the truth of God through Jesus. My mission is clear: to guide souls toward light, away from deception, and into the love that alone saves. Even as I move through the ordinary days of life, cooking, caring for my family, interacting with my community, I carry within me the extraordinary. I carry the knowledge of falsehoods, the clarity of divine truth, and the urgency to awaken hearts. Each moment is an opportunity to witness, to speak, and to shine light into places of spiritual darkness. I am no longer the woman who simply observed rituals and prayed out of duty. I am a woman on a mission, entrusted with a vision of ultimate truth and divine love. The near-death experience has changed everything. My understanding of devotion, my understanding of God, and my understanding of my own purpose. I will continue to live, to speak, and to guide until every soul I can reach is given the chance to know the love and truth of Jesus, and through him, the true God.